Hi everyone, today I'm going to be talking to you about the intentioned photograph. And my big question really is, what makes a photographer anyway? So if you're studying with me and you're new to photography, this question actually is the one I want you to consider before anything else. What makes a photographer? Now we live in a time and an age in which everybody has the most sophisticated of cameras inside their phone in their pockets. But it hasn't always been that way. Photography has been a craft, a science that's required a lot of money in the past. It's perhaps needed a lot of diligence and focus to get the right kinds of photographs when out, for example, using a giant camera with all kinds of different flat plates, things that are light sensitive. For us nowadays, we could become quite complacent about taking photographs. And that is, in fact, why this question is so important. If we choose to study photography, what actually sets us apart from all those people who have a camera? Are we just someone who is snap happy, or are we someone who's thoughtful in what we photograph? And so the main title of the intentioned photograph is really starting us on a journey, thinking about whether we choose to make photographs, whether we plan to make photographs, and whether ever our expectations match our outcomes. I want us to think, when we go on holiday, for example, we all know that we enjoy recording. We enjoy recording things that we think are significant to us. We want to sometimes show off to our friends or our family about places we've been or things we've seen, experiences we've had. And for example, the rise of Instagram has shown us that we are all really obsessed with sharing what we do with others. In fact, all of social media is dominated by that. And when we look at photographs that other people post, for example, are we really looking at those photographs and questioning whether the person is in fact a photographer or whether simply they have happened to take a photograph? We know from looking at influencer accounts, for example, that often we're being sold something in a photograph. But even when we're not being sold a specific product, are we still being sold the idea of the photograph itself? So I want us to look at this particular image. It's one I've chosen because I personally love it as a photograph. I think it's full of movement and contrasts. It's full of relationships that to me are intentioned. As much as the actions within the frame are spontaneous, so the photographer wouldn't have been able to get that pigeon to do that exact thing, but the photographer certainly chose to take the photograph at that exact moment when that pigeon or those pigeons were doing those exact things. I don't think for a second that the photographer found a girl with a yellow skirt and asked her to come and be in his photograph. But the fact that the girl is there in the yellow skirt perhaps was a signal to the photographer that it was time to make the image at all. So when I talk about relationships and looking just at this photograph, there are the relationships between the humans in the frame. There are the relationships between the birds and the humans. There are the relationships between the colours, the shapes, the lines, the way that we move with our eyes around this picture. And those relationships are the things that I suspect have drawn the photographer to this photograph. It's almost as if this photograph belongs in the mind of the photographer. Because don't forget also, with the advent of digital photography, we could take 1,000 photographs, no problem, and whittle it down to just one that we then see perfectly encapsulating a moment. Well, that moment actually may have happened because the photographer did bursts of photographs with very little control over what is represented, but then after the fact has gone back and looked at those images and selected the best. Do we really want to be working in that way? For me personally, I think when I make photographs, I am engaged in really looking at what's in front of me. And in that sense, the engagement with looking is the thing that enables me to find the relationships between colours, forms, people, whatever, But also, if something then happens because I'm already looking, then I think that actually I do still have some control over that as the photographer, because I'm putting myself in a position to be able to make the photograph. This image is by a photographer called Ben Ashley. He's from the UK, but he doesn't live in the UK. He's a very well-travelled person. He's a teacher. There's lots of information about him on sites like Lens Culture. And also, because of his teaching, there's lots of information about his life as a teacher. And I think that's a really interesting relationship in itself, is to have someone who travels a lot, someone who teaches a lot, and someone also who photographs. And those things do work together, of course. So on his travels, Ashley's been all over China, as far as I can tell. Southeast Asia. The photograph you can see on the screen now is from a recent trip to the States. It's really, really evocative photograph, actually. Again, we're thinking about visual relationships, the kind of visual currency of the image. That blue with the horseback, the blue of the rider, the assumptions we make, the relationship, again, that it's not just a relationship that's an easy relationship. Perhaps this photograph in some way calls into question our expectation of what a cowboy is, or how we see even America, how we see a nation encapsulated in this one image. It's clever imagery. And if we think about the photograph we've already seen, and Ben Ashley, as a photographer, as I said, well-travelled all over the world, finding that there are these moments that are worth recording, I think that's a really interesting thing for us to alight upon. That someone who's well-travelled, who travels frequently, who goes all over the place to these far-flung destinations that are, of course, in their own right, very interesting and dynamic and exciting. The fact is that in any place, a true photographer can find beauty, can find those visual relationships, and can make them work so that what the audience sees is something that delights, is something that speaks a narrative, gives us a sense of a story. You'll see on the screen above me, the photograph we're looking at is called Through the Bird Frame, and it's from Myanmar. And Ben Ashley himself says, on a few corners in Yangon, there are gatherings of pigeons waiting silently all around, just waiting. There is something eerie about them just waiting in the shadows and along the wires above. It could be described as Myanmar's version of Hitchcock's The Birds. As soon as the sound of a single seed hits the floor, it unleashes the flapping chaos of 100 or so birds trying to get their fill. What I like most is the contrast of the stained roads and walls with a beautiful girl in her yellow and purple attire taking a moment out of her day to feed the birds. Now that description is very evocative, of course. Even if we didn't have the photograph, we might conjure an image in our minds through reading that. But when we actually do look at that photograph, and even when I showed you it on a larger scale in the previous slide, I'm sure lots of us, even if we've never been to this location, even if we've never been to Myanmar, we all perhaps form our own sense of identifying with this image. I'm sure most of us have experienced that, for me, abject horror when something falls off your plate in a little outside cafe somewhere and you are inundated with flapping wings of scary pigeons. We all know that as an experience, and so immediately we're building our own relationship with the story of the photograph, and that's very, very powerful. I've written on the other side here some questions for us to consider, and if you are studying with me, I would like you to write about these in your books, please. I want us to consider, can we ever know if a photograph is actually an intentional photograph? And just to go back to that a second, what I mean by that is, has the photographer chosen this? And along that, we could start to unpack that and say, where is the choice For Ben Ashley, the choice we see there is because of the girl with the coloured skirt. That was part of his choice in selecting this image. The location is a choice. The place is a choice. The visual language that is observed is actually a choice. He could have chosen to go somewhere else and see something different, but no, he has chosen this scene. So in that context, I want us to think about intention. What do we actually choose to photograph? And continuing from what I've written, so what does the photograph mean broadly and in the world of its own making? In the context of its time, its place, philosophical space, and what actually does the photograph say to me? This applies to any photograph, not just this photograph, not just the photographs in this presentation. If we are photographers, it makes sense that of course we look at others' photographs. And also it makes sense, frankly, that we look back over every photograph we've ever made and try and consider whether we have been really present in that place, in that time. Have we photographed for the purpose of recording the place and time? Or is the photograph its own narrative? Does it tell its own story? Does it go beyond what we know when we're with the place and time and our camera? And what's fascinating with photographs, of course, is that anyone who sees what we capture creates their own reality from it as well. So in looking at the pigeons fluttering, flapping and flying, we're all transported in some way, not just to Myanmar with Ben Ashley, but also back in our own memories to wherever we've been when we've been caught in that flurry. I want us to think what questions the photograph raises. Again, any photograph. I mean, if we're going to think about that for this photograph, we could say, well, my question is that girl afraid of the pigeons? And even in asking that question, actually, that reveals something about me. And those of you who know me do know that I'm really afraid of birds. So for me, this photograph is overwhelmingly scary in one way. But the questions it raises is the girl afraid? You know, she looks so contemplative, yet she's in amongst this quite chaotic flapping. She's not flustered. And so then a whole other selection of questions might come about. And again, it could be about the girl in the yellow skirt. Who is she? Where has she taken her day out from? What does she work as? And also, perhaps a question to be raised here is, do these people know they're being photographed? What's really great about looking at Ben Ashley's work is that because he is so widely travelled, we don't get more of the same again and again and again. I don't feel exhausted by the repetition of what I'm looking at when I look at his work. I see someone who definitely does have a particular visual style. I see somebody who does have, obviously, a deep understanding, probably quite intuitively, of shapes and colours and what is aesthetically pleasing, not just to him, but also to a viewer. But I really do see somebody who loves stories. I see somebody who likes to lead us to the place and then let us kind of riff off in our own world of understanding. I mean, this photograph is from Milan, it's Italian, so he's, I think very interestingly, closed us in to a space where we don't see like a surrounding landscape, but we do see the side of the bus. We do immediately feel, I think, quite thrown by the change in scale between the photographed, or rather the rephotographed character on the advert on the side of the bus with the character directly above. And again, about relationships, thinking that this is a very clever photograph where we have passive models, passive subjects, but we also have a really interesting relationship with that downward glance from the man on the bus. and then that rather strange and smug Dali-esque face staring right out at us as the viewer. There's like a double narrative occurring within this photograph. And it's also a very interesting photograph, and I wonder about it, is if Ben Ashley is aware of, for example, Robert Frank's work, because he does seem to return to kind of modes of transport, I suppose. That could be thematic, I'm not sure. But Robert Frank's work, certainly in the Americans, kind of very famous, highly regarded bookwork of images of the US. I've written there, it's the seminal work on the identity of a people and a place. I wonder if we could say the same thing about Ben Ashley's work. So even though I'm not inundated about, Milan and just Milan in his work, the fact is that I am getting to know kind of an identity somehow through his images. And this documentary, this social documentary style of working, where we feel like we are kind of immersed in a location, is in its own way very powerful, of course, but also very generous, I think. And what I mean by that is, again, going back to something like Instagram, very often I flick through Instagram and I see the most beautiful locations all over the world, and I see them primped and preened and styled to within an inch of their lives. And I don't feel that's generous, actually. I don't feel that that's somebody sharing something beautiful with me because they want me to see beauty. I often feel like that is somebody sharing something with a wide audience where they want the validation of themselves as having been amongst that beauty. When I look at Ben Ashley's work, the generosity happens because I really get the feeling, along with the sense of stories and storytelling, is that he wants to share these places somehow with us, with me. He wants to show me. He's not showing off, he's just showing. And because he's not necessarily going to the most glamorous of places, he's not choosing to go to Myanmar and photograph things that are about being a tourist necessarily. He's capturing things that are about kind of ordinary life. I've written there, when do photographs become their own language for the sake of themselves? Well, frankly, here. And if we think about a comparison between something like Ben Ashley's bus on the previous slide in Milan, or we think about the image you can see on the screen now in colour, that's one of his as well. Thinking about, again, relationships. I'm thinking about generosity of the photographer sharing the places with me. I'm also thinking that where I build my own stories and experience these photographs relative to my experience of places and my life, that they have their own authority, they have their own magic, of course, the quality of the place, but that's intentional. To me anyway, that's what it seems like. It's intentional. Ben Ashley is making intentioned photographs. If he was mindlessly photographing, I don't think we would be seeing what we're seeing at all. And the black and white image is Robert Frank's image, hugely influential on lots of photographers, very raw and real, very telling. There's actually a lot in Ben Ashley's work that's very telling, not just about him, but also about obviously the people he's photographing, the places, how culture shapes identities. Actually, I've written here above me, Jack Kerouac, the beat writer, said about Robert Frank's work that Robert Frank sucked a sad poem right out of America onto film, taking rank among the tragic poets of the world. Now that in itself is a very poetic thing to say about somebody's work, but I wonder if we could actually say the same about Ben Ashley's work. that when we look back over everything he's done, and if you go onto his own website, you'll be able to see lots of examples, like I said, from all over the world. If we're looking at somebody who's photographing, in his case, not necessarily tragedy, but certainly life, these are kind of extraordinary yet ordinary elements of life, human life, recording interactions, recording relationships, finding commonalities in visual language, of course, but taking us places, taking rank among the poets of the world. And the questions I've asked on the slide here, again, if you're one of my students, I would like you to respond to these questions at the back of your books. Should we define photographers as visual poets? Does there need to be intention to find truth? I see a lot of truth in what Ben Ashley does, in the same way that Kerouac saw the kind of tragic poetry of truth in Robert Frank's work. Identities of people, identities of places, something intentional in the way that we are given these images to, yes, consume, but there's a kind of negative connotation to that. This isn't negative at all. This is about truth. It's also showing us that there's extraordinary beauty in truth. I mean, I talk about this a lot, I know. We're looking at a reality that is now suspended, is captured, it's held still forevermore. But in the moment of the making of that photograph, it's the truth. I don't believe that Ben Ashley has faked what he's seen, but the intention to share it with us makes it all the more beautiful. Personally, for me, if I was going to say, could we say that Ben Ashley is a visual poet? Of course he is. I think the image here on the screen, incidentally, is at once dynamic and incredibly peaceful. Though the figure is kind of brought to life by the movement of the hair and the fabric of her skirt, her dress, there's an enormous sense of tranquility. The silence of that white wall behind her, giving us, in terms of visual language, the contrast with the yellow of her outfit. Truthful again. Do I think he went and found this model and told her to do that? Did he speak to the wind and say, could you just blow her hair that way for me? It's about careful looking. And then again, back to this idea, are we photographers or are we simply people with cameras? Ben Ashley is a photographer. He's not just an idiot with a camera. With all due respect to idiots with cameras the world over, Ben Ashley is a photographer. So, your task. This is a really, really interesting starter task for anybody choosing to study photography. I want you to go back through your photographs that you already have made from really any time since you've started taking photographs at all. And I want you to think that you've probably made them unintentionally. You've not made them to be a great photographer. So those would be like holiday photographs at home with friends or family at birthdays, for example. And I want you to select 4 images that you think have a sense of visual poetry. Of course, you're going to put them in a PowerPoint so I can see them. But that visual poetry is about telling the story. It's about being generous with whoever's looking. It's also about memory. It's about encapsulating truth. A whole heap of stuff that's actually really profound in photography that I think, unless you're a photographer, you're not thinking about, you're not aware of. I want you to write a brief explanation for each of your selected photographs using key vocabulary. So that's all the kind of art and photography words that I use when I'm speaking about photographs. I would like you to get used to using that language yourself, because I need you to convey your understanding of visual elements. And also, of course, through doing that, you'll be justifying your selection. So whatever photographs you've picked, I would like you to write about them. And also, I would like you to analyse 2 or more of Ben Ashley's photographs, making connections between his work and your own. And sorry, I've cut it off there. But the stretch and challenge, which I would hope most of you would choose to try, is that I want you to write about the role of Instagram in the rise or indeed fall of the photographer. And the reason why I'm setting that is because, as I've already mentioned, any old person can take a picture and anyone can share that picture. But when we are photographers, when we are active in the intention of what we make photographs of, it takes us beyond what is simply a photograph. And just as an example of what I would pick, I went back through all of my photographs and I thought very carefully about what identifies my work. Those of you who know me in school will know that if I write something on a board somewhere, all of you recognise my handwriting. Well, it's the same thing with my photographs. There's a visual language in my work, in the same way that though Ben Ashley is photographing loads of different locations, we can definitely see that there's something Ben Ashley-like in the way he photographs, especially colour, for example. And I thought about what identifies my work. When I looked over all the photographs I've taken, I really questioned, who am I as a photographer? And the ones I've picked of my own work is really telling, actually, is that where if somebody asked me outright, what kind of photographer do you think you are? I would say, oh, I'm a minimalist. But actually, when I look at my work, I see someone who is really invested in colour, in diagonal even, something purely visual, but also where I think I photograph empty spaces and spaces of architecture, the ones I've selected have all got characters in them. And I think that's because, like most other people, I really love a good story. I want to be taken places by stories. And also, although I wasn't perhaps aware of this when I made these photographs, in the sense that they weren't intentional for this purpose, I would be really glad to think that somebody somewhere would find my work generous to them, to take them to London, to take them to Florence, to take them to Glasgow, to take them to Helsinki, to bring them these people, to bring them these spaces. And so my visual language identifies me as much as my handwriting or the clothes I choose to wear or anything else that is about a kind of identifier in my life. And I actually really hope you enjoy looking back over the photographs you've taken and selecting these so-called unintentional photographs, because through selecting 4 of them even and thinking about someone like Ben Ashley and what he's been doing, I think that from this point on, perhaps we'll have a better chance at making work that is intentional, beautiful, and truthful. So a recap of what you're going to do. You're going to review the photographs you've made unintentionally. That's from the vast archive that all of you will have on your phones, probably. So it could be holidays, birthday parties, friends and family, that kind of thing. I want you to select 4 of them, putting them on PowerPoint, please. And I want you to think about a kind of visual poetry. As I've already said, this idea that there are kind of commonalities to what you like to see visually, but there's also probably central themes that bind your eye, your spirit, to what it is you like to photograph. And you're going to write a brief explanation of each of your selected photographs, using key vocabulary to convey your understanding of the visual elements and justifying your selection. It does not have to be a lot of writing. It could be something simple like, if I show you on mine the bottom image with the yellow stripe, I could say very simply, this image is about recording a sense of home. It's in Glasgow. It's a pub called Stravagan, and every time I go back to Glasgow, I go there and I eat lunch with my friends and my family, and drink a pint of Guinness, and feel very warm and connected, but also very peaceful. I do like to go in there often by myself, and that's why when I saw the man sitting in the window with the paper, actually, I was really just seeing a reflection of myself. I was seeing what I like to do, and that's why I recorded it. And in that sense, actually, then I start to realise that this so-called unintentional photograph is in fact intentional after all. So that kind of thinking and writing, that's what I would love to read. And then, as I said, you're going to look at Ben Ashley's work. I would like you to write, analyse his work, making connections between what you've done and what he's done. And then the stretch and challenge is that please consider, very important in our day and age, the role of Instagram in the rise or fall of the photographer. How on earth do we claim to be photographers when everyone's a photographer? Do we have to be exclusive in any way, or do we simply have to deeply care about what we photograph? And I'm really looking forward to seeing what you show me, what you produce. Good luck.